Welcome to the Science and Paranormal with Dr. Yana and Dr. Elliott, where science meets the unexpected, where we delve deep into the mysteries that straddle the line between scientific inquiry and paranormal. Get ready for a mind-altering journey as we embark on this phenomenal discovery together on United Public Radio Network 107.7 FM.
All right. Welcome to tonight's show.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen.
Tonight's just Dr. Yana and myself, so we'll just be chit-chatting about all things paranormal.
Exactly, paranormal. And today we're talking about regressive hypnosis and what it is and what do we eat it with.
And we're broadcasting live from the United Public Radio Network, the UFO Public Radio Network, 105.3 and 107.7 FM in beautiful New Orleans, and also on Roku TV.
That's right. New Orleans. You know, some say New Orleans, some say New Orleans. So, and I asked a friend of mine, actually, Dr. Sherry, and she said it's New Orleans. This is how would she pronounce it. So this is, I go
have a Canadian accent.
I go with New Orleans. Yeah.
That's awesome. So with hypnosis, what kind of hypnosis are you trained in? Do you do regressive hypnosis?
I'm trained in clinical hypnosis, in fact. So I have been doing which is called the medical hypnosis. And this is what I have been doing. And interestingly enough, that I never believed in regressive hypnosis. If past life regressions was something too funny to me, something that only silly people talk about, or too new agey for me. You know, when you're working on a PhD and then somebody comes and talks about past life regression, it's like, are you for serious? Are you serious? Like something, what's going on with you? But no, this is with the past life regression. It came to me really unexpectedly. And I was quite surprised because it was not something that I heard about. Yeah, we all heard something about it. It wasn't something that I wasn't interested in particularly. But going through the training in clinical hypnosis, we had some students. In fact, it was a 2-year training in clinical hypnosis. And I had some students right next to me in a lounge room doing some regressive hypnosis on each other. And what I was doing, I was resting. I put my feet up and I was enjoying myself. I said, okay, let them talk in their calm, nice voice. I can just take a little rest. Before I knew it, with my closed eyes, my feet up, I found myself in a very interesting place. And it was a very different from what I even remember.
Really?
Was nothing like I ever seen in my present life, right? And it was very unpleasant for me because you know that you are used to everything that you're used to, right? To your modern life, to your surrounding, to people around you. And there I was over 2,000 years ago in some sort of dungeon, as it appeared to me. I was in a room somewhere in some kind of basement. And the windows were so small and rectangular somewhere by the ceiling. And I saw myself being locked up in a room. And some other ladies were bringing me dresses and treating me really like royalty. And I saw everything around myself. So I don't know why I was locked up at the time, but it was really unpleasant for me. All of a sudden to find yourself in this kind of environment. I brought myself out of it. I opened my eyes and think, what is happening? Turned out to be that the 2 students right next to me, who was supposed to be going into one of the past lives, couldn't do it, wasn't able to be regressed at all. So, but it happened to me. And the interesting thing about it is that I was able to understand. I took a note of this experience. Because it was very real to me. I took a note of it. And I understood that a year earlier, in the summertime, I was on the island of Crete in Greece. And why it felt familiar to me is that I was sitting on the in the place called Knossos. If you know about the legend of King, um, what's his name? What was this? His name, King. Uh, it will come to me. It's too late in the day. Too late in the day, guys. So King Minos. Oh my God, how could I forget that? So King Minos and his apparent son from his wife. He was a minotaur, half person, half bull, and it was held in the dungeon in the labyrinth underneath the castle at the time. So when I was there for the first time. And I was there with a group of other American faculty from the University of Missouri and the students. And all I did, I sat down on one of the rocks and I sat there for probably for half hour. I didn't go anywhere. And I love architecture. I love history. And I was just sitting there up until another faculty member came to me and said, Yana, we're going to be leaving soon. You haven't seen anything. And all I told her, I know everything here. This is my home. Imagine somebody in their normal state of mind hearing from me, this is my home. And this is the first time I was there. And there's the ruins of the palace that it used to be there. So at the time, I didn't know about it, but it came all, the picture just drew itself in front of my eyes. And I knew that what I saw a year later, I was actually there over 2,000 years, 3,000 years earlier. And that was my place. Somehow I knew everything, every corner. I knew what kind of people were there, what traditions were there, the roads that were built there. And I said, I told that the faculty member, I said, right around this corner, there is this amazing old road. And surely enough, there it was. She said, how did you know that? So to me, it was very perplexing why I would be having this kind of experience because I never had that before. So my road into past life regression started then because I had my own experience, my own understanding of the past life. And it wasn't something that was told to me that I read somewhere. It was my own personal experience and I came to it.
That's really that's really interesting. And you said, and I've heard this before. My colleague, Dr. Darrell Walsh, who is also a parapsychologist, he's very familiar with hypnosis as well. He took some training in it, but he says that he cannot be, or he's one of those people that are not really susceptible to being hypnotized. And you said someone else in your class there was supposed to be hypnotized and wasn't. Did they talk about, or do you have any idea why that is? That some people, are susceptible to being hypnotized and others aren't?
There are some people that are highly hypnotizable, of course, and it's easier to work with them. Some people are not. It depends on the person. And of course, if you see the shows in Las Vegas, for example, if you go and you see all those hypnotists working with people, it's not necessarily that they would have all of them on the stage performing all of those tricks just randomly taken out of the audience. They work with them ahead of time and they try to see who is highly hypnotizable, who is going to be susceptible to their charms on the stage. So some people are and some people are not so. Some people have a very active mind that wants to be in control of everything. And that's difficult to be hypnotized up until probably the time that you do want to be hypnotized. I had a funny story with one of the ladies a long time ago. She was French and she wanted to lose weight. And that was at the time when I was just learning how to do it. So she came to me probably 7 times. And every time her eyes were like wide open, I couldn't even bring her down. She wouldn't go to sleep. She wouldn't relax. She would always be like alert. And I tried everything with her. I
Yeah.
tried to give her a suggestion on the times that she could close her eyes that, oh, you don't eat. The food is just not looking good to you. So 7 times. And then finally, I got so tired of it. I got so tired. I said, okay, we're going to take it seriously. And I gave her the suggestion that she is allowing me to go into her subconscious. And it is totally fine, absolutely fine, because you have to establish the rapport with your patient. And she did. And on the eighth time, she went down so deeply that she did not want to go out. She didn't want to come up.
Interesting.
She just felt so good there. And I told her, I said, you know what? We're going to do it really easy this time. You are going after work, and she will be probably listening to it. She will remember this case. An amazing, amazing woman. She was a friend of mine. And she said, I told her that after work, every time, every day, you go to the gym for half hour and then you go home, because I figured for a French person not to eat bread and cheese, that's impossible, right? So you have to understand some cultural differences here. And so I did. A week later, she comes up out of hypnosis, of course. She feels so good. Yana, I did not want to get out of it. A week later, she calls me and she says, Yana, to hell your hypnosis. I have decided to go to the gym for half hour after work every day to lose weight. And I'm like, my God, you're probably not remembering anything that we had done. So that is the power of suggestion, even with people who are not highly hypnotizable. It just probably takes time and to build trust and rapport with the person.
That's really interesting. Have you used any of your regressive hypnosis for paranormal investigations, or done any interviews? Where you're investigating anyone's past life, or I know hypnosis is also used in alien abduction phenomena as well. Just curious if you've actually used it for any paranormal investigations.
It is. There is actually such a thing as a conversational hypnosis, and not necessarily that you have to put the person down in order to get some information out of the person. And of course, everything has to be done ethically, because being a therapist, you have to do everything ethically. And yes, I would not necessarily put a person down, but I would be talking and be able to get some information of the events that the person could have forgotten. But then the question comes up, since this is not an exact science, the questions comes up that what is the person remembering necessarily? Because you have to take all of the accounts, all of the sides into the account, right? And understand whether the person heard that story before, like you and I have discussed it already, or whether he was able to um, create the narrative that would be composed of the questions asked, of the things that he
Mm.
had seen before, and suggestions from the other people, you know. So it's very tricky. However, I was able to get some information from people. But really, in paranormal investigations, it doesn't come up that often. People prefer to tell their stories as they are, and they believe in them as being correct.
Very true. Yep, very
Yeah,
true. Yeah, no, that's interesting. I have a interest in it, obviously, because I'm interested in the paranormal, and like I said, I do know that there are some areas of the paranormal that do use hypnosis, and that would be past life regression, and also alien abductions. But
but with
yeah,
alien abductions, Dr. Elliott, with alien abductions, I believe when it happens, and I do know that it does happen, that some people think that it's something out of a different world, right? And something that doesn't exist. But at the same time, I understand that understand the power of mind control. If we as humans, as hypnotherapists, we are able to control the mind of another person, then imagine what would be with other civilizations, more advanced civilizations that come here and take specimens out of humans, for example, to do investigations on them and different kind of research.
Mm-hmm.
Because I myself, saw, I would say, I witnessed. Can't call them aliens. A kind of weird name for them, aliens, extraterrestrials, I guess. Right? I saw them several times, and I saw predominantly grays, and they always come in four, and they call themselves a council of four. And if, for example, I was induced amnesia, for example, I wouldn't be able to remember that, but I was able to remember, and I remember that from childhood, and I remember it now. But I know quite well, and just wanted to share with people. For example, if you do regressive hypnosis or any type of hypnosis with people, and if you give the suggestion of to forget the entire experience, the person can easily forget it. So,
Interesting.
and
You
if
can see
you
how a
want,
lot of psychological modalities for treatment of patients, how this would work. I know they've used hypnosis for people with like trying to quit cigarettes, like you had talked about earlier, weight loss, things like that. It's a fascinating. Is it considered a science?
well, it is not quite accepted by the psychiatry and psychological of the APA, American Psychological Association, is not considered as valid science
It's
because we
interesting
cannot.
because I know on our last show with Dr. Sherry, we had talked about how I think it was in the 70s, the APA had to send out a warning to all the clinicians to be careful with hypnosis just because there was a lot of false memories being drug up surrounding sexual assaults. So they had to caution against that for sure.
Yeah, because when you go through the training as a scientist, of course, as a psychologist, you have to understand the ethical moments here and not really ask the leading questions. And that's the first thing, as you remember, of doing research. You can't ask leading questions, but at the same time, we forget we're all humans, and while doing investigations, when we're in a hurry, for example, right, we might as well forget and cut corners and do ask those questions. So yeah, false memories, and if you think about it, people can devise some personalities that they think are real personalities. If you look at the past life regression, for example, uh, where do people go? Where does their mind go? And what pictures does it see? Because they go to investigate themselves, so their internal world, in a non-linear form, and the time is not linear there. They can go in the past, explore the past, the present, and also the future. It also, investigating the future also came to me unexpectedly when one of my clients asked me to look into the future to see if she would be getting permanent residency in Canada, in fact, because
Interesting.
yeah, for the past couple of years they were denied as a family permanent residency, and they nearly gave up on that. And she just asked me, I said, let's do the hypnosis and just look into the future, and let's see if it is possible. I said, okay, if you're asking, let's do that. So with this experimental way, we went forward in time. I said, okay, let's just pick a year, and we went 1 year into the future. And I said, what do you see? So she saw this beautiful, incredible house, and she could describe everything in it a year from then. And well, I asked her, where's your husband? And so she replied that he was outside in the front yard. And I gave her the suggestion just to go and talk to him. So we want to talk to him. And I asked her to ask him where do they live? And he said in Canada. And the next question was, when did they move to Canada? So he gave an answer. He said, oh, the 27th of October of last year. And he said, oh, wait, it was the 17th of October of previous year. So he couldn't give her the definite answer.
Interesting.
So check this out. She comes out of it and she's so happy that they're moving to Canada. She took it really seriously and she ran with this idea to tell everybody about it. So it was in August. Then we did the future progression session. She runs to me in October 17th, and she shows me her passports that came back. They were given permanent residency on October 17th.
Wow.
And she's like, Yana, she said, I'm such a genius. She was so happy about herself. I'm such a genius. I was able to see it. I said, yeah, you're a genius. Exactly. And she said, another interesting thing is that she said, my husband can never remember the dates. So just because in the future he gave me two dates, 27 and the 17th,
Right.
also is reflective of his personality, who can never remember the exact date. So they got it in the mail. It was so funny. I was so happy for them. And they moved to Canada.
Wow. That is
So
very interesting.
the power of our mind. So even if our science does not really recognize it as something reproducible, right? And it is still for many people, when they have explored so many different possibilities of healing themselves, when they are cornered with different illnesses and they don't understand themselves, where their certain traits come from, where the certain patterns that repeat in their life again and again and again. And if those are happy patterns, people are happy with that. But if they are unhappy, then they're looking for different kinds of modalities and ways to solve that, right? To find a question, to answer to their questions. And I've noticed that a lot of the times when people come to me, they would come as a last resort. And then, as you mentioned, people, when they want to do the regressive hypnosis, they want to deal with some of the traumas, the unresolved traumas, some of the repressed memories, and even
Right.
trauma of traumatic events that they have shoved so far they don't even remember that. And they do come to me, and my children actually said that, Mom, you make all of your clients cry. Why do they cry every time that they leave and they're crying? Mom, I said, because I said, without crying, it is not possible to uncover all of those deep-seated emotions at times that come up, and you have to be able to deal with them. So that's very interesting field. If we can find answers to our questions, why not explore that? And there are many, many scientists who are incorporating nowadays and previously as well, and even more now, incorporating past life regression into their therapy, and they're finding amazing answers.
That's really fascinating. No, it's something that I probably should brush up on for sure. It's one of the things that I'm not, just don't specialize in and don't have a lot of,
I will
knowledge
hypnotize you.
about.
Elliott, you want to go to sleep right now?
Well, it is 11:34 here in Nova Scotia.
So I'm
So
going to go to sleep on my own.
yeah, and I have been told that I can go to sleep pretty much at will. So
That's
uh,
good.
no, that's really interesting. And last week when we talked to Dr. Sherry too, we talked about memories and how they degrade, and like you said, when people repress memories, it's kind of it's still up there in the mind somewheres. It might just not necessarily be available right now. But yeah, no, it's a very fascinating topic.
I was able to find answers to my questions. And if nothing else, I would be here to even sharing my own story, uh, how I was able to overcome through my own personal research, not anybody else, before I even started doing past life regression on people. Uh, I was able to understand why I have claustrophobia, why I had fear of heights, why I had such incredible interest in England, particularly London, and English literature. So I myself was able to go back into some of my past lives and understand why, for example, with the fear of heights. So I was able to get to the point where I saw myself in the previous life falling off the cliff. Like,
Hmm,
that's it. I understand it now. I fell off the cliff.
that's
And
interesting.
coming back out of it, we do, as scientists, we always do all this research on ourselves, right? People like do that with the LSDs, with different kind of medications. We want to know, right?
Yes.
So I did that with myself. So when I came out, I decided to go on the highest in the highest building, and I looked down, and I wasn't afraid, and my head wasn't spinning. I said, "Okay, it actually works. It works." Yeah. And with claustrophobia, for example, I was able to tackle it and actually get rid of it with the same case as I told you about when I was on the island of Crete
Right.
in the palace of the Minotaur Palace, the King Minos, when I was kept locked up in the room without being able to leave. So I was able to take care of that. And another case with my love of English and English literature. I've always been so fascinated and just loved it. And in fact, one of my bachelor degrees is in English and English literature. So I was able to find out I was a writer contemporary of Shakespeare. And I was writing in the very similar um, style, kind of sarcastic style as I speak now. And this is the way that I also write. And it is so fascinating. And we think it is something behind the clouds. It's somebody who is able to perform these tricks. It must be some spiritual teacher, guru, someone to whom we have to go and have the flocks of people flowing to him, just asking questions, begging. You know, no, it's so easy because I was able to understand why. If I'm going there, why not just dare to ask questions? I ask questions. I get names. I am able to do my research when I come up, get out of the hypnosis, self hypnosis. I do my research and understand that, yeah, these people were actually the actual historical figures. And to me, I don't know everything. I'm not a walking encyclopedia, although I do know a lot. But at the same time, I use internet. Internet is a huge encyclopedia because even if you go to the library, sometimes you can't find it, and then you see other people's experiences when they share, right? And some old mythological stories that you come across, you understand. Oh, it did happen. For example, in history, it did take place. So it's very very interesting. And another interesting thing is that when I came to London one time, it was before I knew that I lived in London long time ago. I was able to walk through London and know where each street is located, where I need to turn, where I need to go. And finally came to the Westminster Abbey, and I stood right next to the place where I was at the time buried and I didn't know why.
Hmm.
It was so interesting to me, and then I realized, yeah, because this is the way that he lived. That was his favorite city, where he died, in fact. So you can find so many answers to your likes and dislikes and patterns in life. Fascinating.
That is very interesting. Now, do you believe that we have all had past life, or do you think that there are? I know I've heard the term new soul, old soul. What's your thoughts on that?
Well, not necessarily that I believe, I know. I know, when sometimes they say, "Oh, do you believe in God?" You believe in something that you don't know. You have not experienced, and you're placed in the position to believe because you never experienced that. You were told to believe, and you believe. So I don't believe. I know. I know, in fact, through my own personal research, and the visions that I have, and the past life regressions, so many that I had done with people, and they're incredible stories. I know that some souls are indeed old souls, meaning that they have incarnated many times on earth, and they possess a well of wisdom and knowledge, something that the new souls that just came here, babies, wouldn't have.
Mm.
And not necessarily they're bad people, but we're not talking about that. I'm just saying about
Just
the
naive or not
naive.
experienced? Yeah,
They're
yeah.
naive and experienced and fun-looking souls. And we need people like that as well. But at the same time, when we see sages, they are the cumulative walking wells of information that they were able to remember from the previous incarnations. Because in my understanding that we somehow we continue the certain line of incarnations, something very similar to all of these stories that I was able to uh, do the map of them and understand, like, what are the similarities and dissimilarities. And I've understood that every story was somewhat similar to the previous one. There were connections. So,
Very, very fascinating.
yeah.
Um, no, it's definitely something that I'm gonna have to brush up on. I know I do follow a little bit of the work that Ian Stevenson does.
Mhm.
He's a psychiatrist for anyone that doesn't know who he is, and in the field of parapsychology, he focuses on past life regression. Um, but yeah, it's I find it absolutely fascinating, and that you can get some information to kind of continue your investigation. Like you said, it's not used a whole lot, or like you said, some people want to use it as like a last resort. But I know just like in the investigations I've done in 26 years, we haven't used any hypnosis, which is interesting. But we also haven't, most of our cases are ghosts and haunting kind of cases that come up. So not we don't really get people coming to us with past lives. Although I think I've told the story before on a couple podcasts. My niece, uh, she was 6 at the time, and when I started dating Sarah, they were telling me about my niece Summer, and that Summer always talks about her other family, and that her older sister, would catch her in her bedroom talking to her older family, and they'd ask her about it, and she said she's got a mom and like some siblings and stuff like that. So when I heard this, I said, "Oh, it's interesting because she fits that age group that we know from all the work that's been done at the University of Virginia through their perceptual studies unit. That children, around that age, 6, 7, can recall their past life." So I sat her down and just had like a very kind of casual conversation with her to see if I could get any details out of it. But she didn't really open up or talk about it. So it would have been interesting to have her undergo hypnosis to kind of see what you could dig up in that case. Since then, she's 8 or 9 years old now, and she doesn't talk about it anymore, which is interesting because, again, the studies from University of Virginia have shown that once they start to hit that age, they seem to kind of forget about the past life.
Yeah,
Obviously,
that's where the hypnosis comes to
yeah,
help.
yeah. I mean, there's been cases obviously of adults that have recalled their past life as well. It's not just children that recall it, but it's more common with children than it is with adults.
When we think about hypnosis, a lot of people have so many misconceptions about it. When we go to sleep, we dream, right? And what is hypnosis? Is a sleep like trance. And it was Greek god Hypnos, the god of sleep, of course. And hypnosis, that's why it was called hypnosis, but it's nothing extraordinary if you look into that. Yes, it is perceived as something unattainable, extraordinary, but if you look at it closely, it's nothing out of this world. And the cultures have used it for centuries, for centuries, this technique in order to bring up healing to people, in order to get some mystical experiences. Uh, how does this past life regression differ from those mystical experiences that people had before, for example, or the dreams that we have? For example, I have been recording my dreams since I was 16 because I understood that in them lays a very uh, big layer, kind of huge rock fossil that contains so much information.
Yeah,
And I remember I was 16 and I woke up and I was in the battle. I had a dream that I was in the battle, and I remember my name, and it was a French name, and I saw death everywhere. That was the time when the internet was just starting, and the computers. I had like the first computer. It was so huge and bulky, and I was able to go and look up that name, because otherwise, where else are you going to go to look it up, right? And surely enough, there was only one mention of that person by that name in some French battle 300 years ago.
hmm.
So, how could I tap into that information in my sleep?
Yeah,
I know that.
dream research is very fascinating too, because even today modern science doesn't really understand why we dream. But you're right, it is a very fascinating subject as well. Some people have precognitive dreams where they dream of a future event occurring. A lot of people talk about a certain type of visitation, apparitional visitation through dreams, where people have reported that it's much more than a dream. Like, it's very, very vivid. You can smell, like, say your grandpa passed away, you could smell grandpa's aftershave in the dream. You can feel like his coat that he used to wear. People will describe, those types of senses: the tactile sensation, the olfactory sensation, and it's just more real than a normal dream. And it's been documented many, many times by people that have had this experience. And so parapsychologists believe that that is a form of a apparitional visitation, is a dream visitation. So dreams are very, very interesting, and we forget them very quickly as well. And apparently that's because the certain part of our brain that encodes memories is kind of deactivated or put on sleep mode, if you want to call it that, during
Yeah.
these dreams. So
Was it
we
Thomas Edison that was holding the ball in his hand, that he would just go dreaming, of course, looking for some answers to his questions. And every time he would fall asleep, he would drop that ball, of course, he would nod off. And he wanted to remember his dreams, because many scientists, including Einstein, for example, if you just take him, he also was looking into his dreams for solutions to the problems, and scientific problems, mathematical problems, because they knew of the power of the subconscious. But when we go into the past life regressions, for example, right? To the past life that's supposed past life. I know that some people say, and they publish it. Oh, I remember my thousands of my past lives. Oh, that's very interesting to me. I can't really say that I don't believe them, but at the same time, what happens that we can form all those false memories, being so eager to go into this experiences and experience some entities, right? Some interesting stories that they had before, but at the same time, have to be really careful to even. We've spoken about the false memories, but there's such a
Mm.
thing that people claim that they met with some discarnate entities, during that time. And that has to also be taken cautiously. I don't disregard this possibility, but people do have this different kinds of apparitions and different kind of entities that come to them in the sleep, in the even also in the past life regression. you know it's it also has to be taken with caution. So it's not that the past life regression is not for everybody.
Yeah, that's interesting that you mentioned Thomas Edison a little bit earlier there, because he was actually interested before he passed away on creating a device to try and communicate with the dead. But unfortunately, he didn't get to pursue that work.
Mm.
It would have been very interesting if he did. Um, but yeah, unfortunately, he passed away before he could do it. But just kind of a keynote. We always talk about
Yeah,
Edison there in
so
parapsychology.
interesting. But the
Yeah.
interesting thing is that they don't come back. So he really wanted to see what is there beyond death, right? And
Mm.
somehow, when he went to another world, he's not able to come back and tell us, okay, they will should know that we are also interested, right, to find out what is there beyond death. They're not able to come back. So if you look at all the mythology of the previous generations, if we take the Greek mythology, classical Greek mythology, we would see that souls, people when they died, their souls would travel the river Lete, right? And once they passed it onto another world, they would forget all their memories of this life would be forgotten. And also in Chinese culture, it is as well. There was a goddess. I don't remember her name, but the god that there was a deity goddess that would give people some potion, bittersweet potion, and then they would forget their previous lives, moving on into a different one. So we do
Interesting.
forget. We do forget.
Yeah, no, that's very, very fascinating. I love that that stuff. It's something I'm gonna have to brush up on for sure. Um, I think it's got a lot of a lot of potential uses, and it's probably underused as well. Like you said, it's not really accepted by mainstream psychology or psychiatry. But I mean, mainstream science doesn't accept much of what comes out of parapsychology either. So
Exactly.
we can kind of relate to that.
Exactly.
We're like the underdogs, for example.
Exactly. We're rebels. We're
Yeah,
rebels.
yeah, exactly.
But at the same time, if you look at the psychology, what is this? Psychology is mainstream psychology is the science of the mind.
Right.
Has nothing to do with the soul. We're not treating the souls. We are treating the minds of people, not the souls, not the psyches, as a
Mm.
psychology from the Greek word, the psycho, right? The logos, the science of the soul. There's nothing of the soul in there.
Oh, that's a good point. It was interesting. Just I did a quick little check here because we were talking about Thomas Edison and how he wanted to design a device to communicate with the dead, and I thought he might have been the one whose signatures appeared on the film during the skull experiment.
Oh
But
yeah,
it,
yeah,
but
yeah,
it,
yeah,
but
yeah.
it wasn't Thomas Edison. Apparently, it was Albert Einstein.
Ooh.
His initials had appeared because they believed during the skull experiment that they called these the spirit team. It was kind of like the scientist team because they were helping them try and develop how to communicate with them better, and they were offering them advice. And on one of the films, what they would do is both the mediums and the skull investigators, and then later on, the Society for Psychical Research investigators would take an unopened can of film, and it would be purchased brand new. It would be secure. They'd put it in a box, lock it in, and then allegedly the spirits could imprint photographs and things like that, drawings and scribblings on the film. And when it would get developed, they would see these images. And one of the images that had come back had the initials of Albert Einstein on it. So really, and apparently it matched what his signature would have looked like as well. So really fascinating when you start getting into like spirit photography and that.
It is fascinating because those are electromagnetic fields, and we still don't know much about it. But if you take this experiment with those undeveloped films, and I remember that when I was little, I would be developing those films in a dark room with my dad with a red light. So I know what it is all about. So when the undeveloped film is something that shows up there, that means that somehow it needed to get there. And
Right.
the only way that with electromagnetic fields, if no one touched it, there should be some electromagnetic field and disturbances in that field as well. So
Right.
we think that we look at each other and we don't see our energy field around us, right? Not that many, at least, not that many. And then we assume that this is what we are. That I look at you, Dr. Elliott, and this is your head, this is your shoulder, this is your earphones, and that's it. But in fact, there's more to you. There's so
Right.
many different layers of the etheric bodies around you that where do they go? So when people pass along, those energies don't go anywhere, correct?
Yeah,
And
well, I think it was Albert Einstein himself said, energy cannot be created or
exactly.
destroyed, and everything's energy. Everything's
And he came to give us his signature just to prove the fact as a scientist.
yeah. No, it was the skull experiment. I know it takes some people, give it its criticism because they feel that the mediums had too much control, and that there were times where they wanted the room to be dark, and they said that you couldn't use infrared film because that's what the spirits had told them. And I know, of course, skeptics are very skeptical of that because that's
Yeah.
how things used to be back in the 1800s when psychical researchers first started to investigate the paranormal. That's why they got involved in becoming paranormal investigators, was to investigate claims of communicating with the dead during the spiritualism movement. And during that time frame, they did uncover a lot of frauds and hoaxes and things like that. But it was funny on the documentary. You can still watch it on YouTube. I think it's called Afterlife Investigations, The Skull Experiment. You can see that they weren't supposed to record during this one session when they were doing items that were materializing and dematerializing, but they kept the camera on, and you could see some flowers, some petals from flowers materialize within the room. So it was it's really interesting. No, that's really awesome. We've got some fans that have been watching tonight here. See, Wes Coleman has given us some comments there and agrees with you. He says he thinks that everyone has a past life. Some are just buried deeper and harder to bring to the surface. All depends on the individual, his and her abilities to access these memories. And Foxy Joe says hello to both you and I.
Hello, guys.
And we're broadcasting live on the United Public Radio Network, the UFO Radio, Paranormal Radio Network, 105.3 and 107.7 FM from New Orleans and on Roku TV.
Dr. Elliott and I, here in the darkness.
We
When it's
are.
so dark and cold outside, and we're inside talking to you guys.
Yeah,
How cold
talking
is it?
all things paranormal. It's been very cold here lately. I think it was -1 degree Celsius there the other day. So, yeah,
Ooh,
that's getting down there, even in Fahrenheit. Well, I'm trying to think. I think 32 degrees Fahrenheit is 0 degrees.
34 or 34. I don't remember.
Yeah, it's like 32 or 34. Yeah, so we'd be like minus or 30 degrees Fahrenheit roughly, probably something like that.
Oh my God, it is so cold. We're here like late 60s in Fahrenheit, and it is so cold. We're freezing to death.
Oh my goodness. That's funny. Yeah, and I'd probably be there in a t-shirt.
Yeah, that's what people do. They still come for vacations, and you could see that for Thanksgiving break. So many people came, and you can see the tourists because they were t-shirts and flip-flops. And here we are, we're freezing, our teeth are shattering, so
Yeah,
cold.
yeah. Well, when I was stationed, for those that are just tuning in and don't know who I am, I was a former RCMP officer for 15 years. One of my postings was in Yellowknife, Northwest Territories, which is in the subarctic. It's on the 63rd degree parallel, and it would get very, very cold there, minus 40, where you would go outside and,
Ooh,
any moisture on your eyelids would freeze, and
ay,
you get
ay, ay.
moisture in your beard and that would just freeze. And it was interesting. So whenever you took a vacation back home to Nova Scotia in the winter time, you would go outside like in your t-shirt and stuff like that. People would look at you like you're crazy, but it was
Right?
just, but it was like, really, if you think about it, let's say it's even just like minus 10, that's still like a 30-degree difference. So, for me, it felt really warm, but people will look at you and think that you're crazy. But
That is so funny. I'm glad I don't live there. I'm good here. I'm good here. You're gonna laugh, but for Christmas, actually, for New Year's, for holidays, for the kids, we bring artificial snow, and we blow this artificial
oh
snow
yes,
for kids.
yeah, I've heard
So
that because you guys don't get snow a whole lot. It's every once in a while. I can't imagine the car accidents if you guys had a big downfall.
we don't. We go to the mountains, and you see it there. But no, if it rains here, people think it's snowing so hard, even it's just a little bit drizzling, people forget how to drive.
That's
That's the
funny.
most ridiculous thing. They forget in Southern California. Yeah,
Yeah, that's
that's
too
the
funny.
thing.
That's
Funny,
interesting. Do
funny.
you have any paranormal projects that you're working on?
Not at the moment. Not at the
No.
moment. I have one that I was just recently asked, and interestingly enough, those people, they watched us talking about it, and they reached out to me, and they wanted me to come and investigate.
Ooh, that's
So
awesome.
yeah, that is very interesting. This the case of haunted house. I haven't really gotten there yet. I have to drive for a couple of hours, but I'm intending to go, and they're pretty spooked out. So
Oh, that's
we'll.
great. That's great. If you ever get a crazy case, let me know and I'll try and fly down.
Ooh, okay. The crazy case.
Yeah, yeah. No, that's good. We had one just last week. Myself and my investigator Andrew Baird. We had gone to this apartment here in town in Sydney, Nova Scotia, Canada, to investigate. The gentleman, his wife had passed away in January, and he was seeing apparitions in his apartment. He thought one of them might have been his ex-wife, and so we had made arrangements, came over.
Ex-wife, meaning that the
Sorry,
present wife who passed
not
away.
not his ex-wife. I guess I should rephrase that. His
You probably
deceased
wouldn't want to see her.
his deceased wife. So I was interested because she always called me her third
Okay.
son. They were family friends, so I thought the case was really interesting. So we went over. I made Andrew the lead investigator so that I wasn't the lead investigator and there was no bias on my part because I didn't know the family personally. But it was really interesting. He was describing two things that I haven't really heard. So he's lived in this place, I think he said 24 years, and there was no activity at all. They've never had anything paranormal happen. They're not really like big paranormal people. They don't watch the TV shows or anything like that. And all of a sudden, the first night he saw an apparition of a female and a male, but their back was turned to him, so he could only see the back of them. And he said that they looked like the height of his ex-wife, or sorry, his deceased wife. And
Just
there I go again. I'm just Xing people out for some reason. I don't know why. But I just want to X people out tonight. But no, so he thought it was his deceased wife, and he said the male figure kind of looked like the description of what his deceased brother could have been. So that part was interesting. And then he said when he saw a female apparition later, it was same build, but again, the back of the apparition, not the front on, so he couldn't see any faces. Looked like his deceased wife, but when she had longer hair, because she did used to have longer hair down here, and then in recent years it was more like shoulder length. So that was really interesting. I told him, I explained to him, I said sometimes apparitions will change their appearances. Some people will report seeing them younger or older. It's how they want to represent themselves to you and how you'll be familiar with, viewing them. So I said that part's not unusual, but I just find it really fascinating that she has appeared to him in two different forms. But the one interesting thing, non-paranormal, that we had uncovered is we checked, we had an electromagnetic field radiation detector with us. So we checked all the outlets in his house to make sure everything was okay, and everything was looking pretty good up until the point we got into his master bedroom. And so interestingly enough, in the master bedroom is where he has been seeing these apparitions, but they're outside his bedroom door. But the outlet right next to, about 2 feet away from his bed, the EMF reader hit 198 milligauss, and it actually glitched out on us at one point because the radiation coming from it had hit so high. So that, I had never seen a reading that high before. I actually tested it multiple times. It came up around anywhere between 194 to 198.
How did you feel at the time when you got that reading?
I felt completely fine. Like, it didn't feel like it affected me or anything like that. So I thought that was really interesting. So then I took the EMF reader over to his bed, and it would drop down to 0. And that's normal. That's what they call the inverse law effect, because what happens is as you get away from the source of the EMF, it should rapidly decline. And that's what was happening. We got away from the plug, and by the time you get over to the bed 2 feet away, it had dropped down to 0. So then I started doing some research because of Dr. Michael Persinger, the late Dr. Michael Persinger's work at Laurentian University here in Canada. He studied the effects of EMF and magnetism on the temporal lobes, which are just located by your ears there. And so his bed was very low to the ground, where his head would have laid. His left temporal lobe would have been 2 feet away from the outlet. So I started doing some research on whether or not where the radiation is hitting 0, if that would affect him and cause him to see apparitions. Because we did have another case where Dr. Darrell Walsh, my colleague, had investigated where an alarm clock was giving off excessive amounts of EMF, but it didn't dissipate towards where the person was laying in bed. So it was actually affecting them to see apparitions. But upon the research, where the radiation drops down to 0 towards the bed, that actually should not account for him seeing the apparitions in that particular case. When Dr. Michael Persinger was doing it in the laboratory, the radiation had to be applied directly to the temporal lobes, and he used way under 198 milligauss. He was using between less than 10 milligauss, and that was causing the effect. So very fascinating with that case. We told him that he should definitely have a certified electrician check that out. The reason why it was giving off that kind of radiation readings is that it could have been an ungrounded or unshielded wire. And so you want to get that checked out just in case there's a fire hazard or anything like that. But very interesting case. And
if it was apparitional, for example, that I'm sure that you and everybody else in the room would have felt it one way or another.
Yeah, we didn't feel anything in the apartment. We had offered to come back and do an overnight investigation. So we're just waiting to hear back from there. Our main goal to go there that night was to interview him and find out exactly what he's experiencing, and then we did plan on doing like an environmental assessment, and that was the one thing that we did come up with was the high EMF rate readings. So very fascinating cases. I love digging into them. A lot of times we do find some normal things. I think I told on other podcasts, um, this one case we had a couple of years ago now. It was at a haunted Airbnb, and the woman had reported three different things that had happened. One is that she saw a female apparition. The second one is that event that was that there was muddy boot prints that would appear in the
Hmm.
kitchen. No matter how many times she cleaned it, she'd come back after a guest checked out or whatnot, and there'd be muddy boot prints there. Or if she had nobody in the place, there'd be muddy boot prints. So she couldn't figure it out. And the third thing that was happening is the curtain on the back door. No matter how many times she moved it over to the left, it would always be pushed back to the right. So myself and one of my investigators, Pierre Filitro, we went to the house. We spent the night, set up some cameras in the kitchen, um, did some electronic voice phenomena sessions. We didn't get anything happen. The only strange thing that happened is we had a fairly new battery. It was brand new, actually, that we were putting into a device, and all of a sudden it got burning hot, and it was getting like hotter and hotter, and we actually had to take it out of the device and just throw it out. We think if we hadn't taken it out, it possibly would have continued to get so hot that it might have exploded. That was strange. I wouldn't call it paranormal, but it was strange. And so in that case, we were able to solve one of the three mysteries. We didn't see an apparition, and the boot prints didn't appear for us, but we did figure out the curtain. And what had happened there is every time the furnace kicked on, it would give a little bit of a draft, and it would slowly push the curtain over, but you couldn't see it if you were just standing in the kitchen. You wouldn't notice it to just stare at the door. You'd have to stay there all night. But what happened is on the camera, so when we woke up, the curtain was closed. We purposely closed it all the way to the left. And when we woke up in the morning, it was pushed over to the right. So we were really excited. So we started to watch the video. But when we watched the video, every time you could hear the furnace kick in, you could see, the drape start to kind of move over. So once you time lapsed it, that's exactly what happened. Each time the furnace kicked in, you could see the drape move over to the right. So we told the family that. We said, we're not saying the house is not haunted because we haven't spent enough time in that environment, but we can tell you that we think we solved one of your three mysteries anyway. And so she was happy and excited about that. But it's always fun when you go to an investigation. It's like a mystery that you want to try and solve, whether it's natural or unnatural or
Yeah.
paranormal.
But was she really happy that you found that there was nothing going on, right? Or she was actually hoping that you would find something?
She was hoping that we would validate her experiences because she had seen a female apparition, and her and her family had discovered the muddy boot prints. And unfortunately, we couldn't provide that to her. We just hadn't spent enough time in the location. But we had offered to come back if she wanted us to, and she did think it was really cool though that we solved the third mystery, so she wasn't really worried about the drape anymore. Because and you know this from your experience too. When people are living in a haunted house or a haunted environment, they can start to develop almost basically it's like a form of trauma. So they're on edge, and then they start to think that every noise and squeak is paranormal and things like that. So it kind of snowballs. So I think for her that really helped, to find out that we solved something that was not paranormal. But as for the apparition and the boot prints, that still remains a mystery.
That's interesting. That if nothing else had happened, but the boots, the prints, that's very interesting. But you sometimes people want to experience those things. Sometimes their desire to experience something of paranormal, it even brings the experiences to them, and they actually start to experiencing them physically.
Right.
So that is a very interesting capacity of our mind to be able to experience something that we want to see. Like for example, if we go back to Thomas Edison that we discussed,
Hmm.
he was an incredible scientist and inventor. and we just have to thank him for having light, right? And for example, now we're sitting in our home dungeons, and when it's so cold outside, right? And we have light, so we have to thank Thomas Edison. But what happened when he was little, and I think he was brought up by a single mom. One time when he was little, he came home with a note from the school teacher and gave that note to his mom. And thinking about the power of suggestion, he gives this note to his mom, and the mom opens that letter and reads it, and she starts crying. And he asked her, "Why are you crying, mom?" And she said that, your teacher says that you are so smart, they can't teach you anymore. So they suggest that you stay home and you do homeschooling of whatever kind that it existed at the time. So his mom was so instrumental in his education, building him up and telling him how smart he was. So he grew up believing that he was smart, smarter than other people in this regard, right? If the teachers could not teach him anything else. And he became the incredible inventor, and he invented the light bulb among anything else. But do you know what was actually in that note, Dr. Elliott?
What?
That note said that your son's intellectual abilities are almost non-existent, and we would suggest to keep him at home and not send him to school anymore. There's nothing that we can teach him.
Hmm.
Look at the power of suggestion, that of that heroic mother that turned the entire narrative of lacking intellect into an incredible intellect, and sort of like the salvation for humanity,
Hmm.
right? So, and we talk about hypnosis, and that is where the conversational hypnosis come into place. This is how you build up people. Excuse me. This is how you support them in their dreams as well. That's very
No, it's
interesting.
like you said, the mind is very powerful, and we talked about it last show with Dr. Sherry about how our minds and how we've evolved and we've survived for so long, but our minds are so negative all the time. Except for yours, of course. Yours is always raining
Ma-
positivity.
Not
but
always. Not always.
for the most part, like our minds try to break us down. They tell us that we can't do it, or I know so many people that are like afraid of change. Like they don't want to change their job, so they just go to work every day and they're miserable and they're complaining about their job, but they're too afraid to make that leap. And I had a friend that was on commission sales and in the auto industry, and of course cars are not selling right now with the interest rates being so high, and people not being able to afford their heat, and Christmas time coming up and things like that. So there was a 2 week period where he got his paycheck and he had $0 because he's strictly commission. And I told him, I said, man, I said, like, you're getting to be older, and you've got your wife, you've got 3 kids that you have to support. Like, you need a steady income. You need to know how much money's coming in every 2 weeks. You can't live off this commission anymore. And it's the only thing he did for years. But he finally made the jump, and now he's a lot happier. He walked into doing a maintenance job. He gets paid a really decent wage, and it's guaranteed income. And but he took that leap of faith and made that change. And there's just so many people that are afraid to do that, and the mind just tries to tear us down. So it's nice to see when people fight that inner voice that we all have and go on and do something very successful.
Yeah, but that little voice also comes from somewhere. It comes from our parents sometimes, but quite often with their negative thinking, and from the society, from school. I remember myself, I had so much negativity brought up to me by the teachers. In fact, I had a friend who was sitting right next to me at the desk, and he would always get the C's and D's. And the teachers told him that, you're going to be chasing rats. So you're going to become the trash truck driver. Not even the driver. You're going to be picking up the trash. In fact,
Geez, those days, those jobs pay really well.
yeah, exactly. Right.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah,
Yeah. So,
yeah.
well, guess what happened
People,
to him?
people would fight to get those jobs now.
Right. Yeah. This is a very interesting way how things develop, right? And at the time, it was very negative.
Hmm.
But interestingly enough, that did not put him down. He went to Moscow. He went to Moscow. He moved. His family moved to Moscow. They had to, and he became one of the most successful entrepreneurs in Moscow.
Wow.
And
No, that's great. I love hearing stories about that. People with the
yeah, it's
underdogs.
that if we go back to Einstein, what did Einstein said? If we judge the fish by its ability to climb the tree, it will always think, it will always live thinking it is stupid.
Hmm.
So, and how many times do we judge people by their ability, fish by their ability to climb the tree?
Hmm. Yeah, no, it's you're right. You're right. And talking about the power of the mind too. There's been lots of studies done in parapsychology on believers and the paranormal, and we touched on it last week with Dr. Sherry. We talked about like a skeptic really, if they saw an apparition, they're not going to like automatically think that it's believe that it's a ghost or an apparition, because it totally goes against their beliefs and their belief system. But it is interesting that a lot of these paranormal studies have shown that believers are more susceptible to having paranormal experiences. What's your take on that?
Well, it has been my observation, Dr. Elliott, that somehow, interestingly enough, whatever people believe, whatever belief that they have, religious belief, they tend to see those particular deities that are a part of that narrative of that religious story.
Hmm.
Right. For example, I've never seen Christians seeing, for example, Muhammad. They all see Jesus. They all see
Right.
Archangel Michael, for example. They see different biblical personages.
You're
Why
right.
not
Yeah.
something else?
Yeah.
But why not something else? So, what I have discovered through my own personal research, that and people may agree or disagree with me, but it is my own personal belief, is that we can create in our mind and then um, bring it into the physical manifestation, whatever our mind has created,
Hmm.
and materialize it somehow. And then other people start seeing that as well. I will give you one interesting example.
Hmm.
Um,
Please do.
I was, I didn't quite understand what I saw at the time. I remember that one time I was praying a long time ago. I had a very difficult moment in my life, and I was praying for help. And I did get help. All of a sudden, in the room, there was this crazy noise and a lot of wind at 11 o'clock at night. Lots of wind and noise. I'm like, what is happening here? And I see these creatures, ugly creatures at the time, which I didn't know what they were. And they came and they sat on my shoulders. I'm like, that's it. My mind is gone. I need to leave this room and never pray again. You know? So I left the room. I forgot about this experience. I was shaking at the time. And I'm like, okay, what was that? And those creatures, they look like really big creatures with the feet as a donkey, right? You would probably recognize it from the Bible. They would be have the hooves, and then they would have, each of them would have four wings and the four faces of the lion, of a person, of an eagle. What was the last one? I forget.
Oh yeah, lion, eagle. Yeah, I'm not sure either.
Ox, of an ox, I
Is it
think,
ox?
right? Right. And then um, this is what I thought, this is what I saw. And then next morning, I'm like, okay, I need to answer what it was. So, like, what was it, people? What was it? So I'm asking myself this question. And I start driving. I got into the car and I was driving. And I never listened to the radio, never at the time, because my head was always preoccupied. I was working on my master's degree and I didn't need any more information in my brain because it was ready to explode. And all of a sudden, I turned on the radio. The first words that come, and let me tell you now how angels look in the Bible. I'm like, oh, this is interesting. And he
Mm-hmm.
starts telling that those were cherubims, right? Those were cherubims. Those were not seraphims. They were cherubims. We see them in classical paintings of this nice little bitty chubby children.
Yeah.
They're
Yeah.
not. They were seraphims. And in fact, this is exactly how they look. And they were seated by the um, right side of God, I guess, not Jesus, but God. And they came to me. And I could not believe that I saw something like that because I never seen anything like that in my life. I did not have any frame of reference at the time. Not that I would ever even see it in my life before or even read about it. Even if I had a degree already, a bachelor's degree in religious studies at the time, I was studying Bible and the Old Testament, but somehow I never came across, but maybe I did. And this is how my mind was playing tricks on me.
Oh, interesting. Interesting. Kind of like what we talked about, where you can hear something or experience something and not
And that
realize.
would, yeah, in
Yeah.
the science, it is called cryptomnesia.
Yeah.
That when your mind would be able to compose a narrative of the previous experiences, those that have been repressed because uh, they were not interesting at the time or some unpleasant experience. And of course, if you read about something like that and something ugly like that, right? That the something that we consider ugly, not necessarily that it was, but
Mm.
it was not human.
Yeah, that is interesting because again, last week we talked a little bit about cryptonesia, but so it's interesting. So you don't have a Catholic background, or do you? You were just studying
Not necessarily Catholic. It was I used to be Russian Orthodox,
Russian Orthodox,
and
and
there's
then
a
but you're
belief in the saints and angels and everything like that. Yeah, but
yeah.
when
Yeah,
I
because
started,
I think the story of the that type of creature, I think it comes from the book of Ezekiel. And so it's really interesting that you were studying, like, the Old Testament, because
yeah, but if you look into
I
that,
think they do
really,
mention.
before at the times, people did not really know what to make of certain things that they saw. It could not
Yeah.
have been an angel. It could have been some extraterrestrial craft
Yeah.
that was shining. The hooves were shining. There were feet of some craft, and of course they were moving. Of course, and I saw them. They were moving. Actually, not they were not even flapping wings. They were moving in certain directions at the same time, and the spacecrafts could have done that,
Mm.
and there are the inscriptions on it, and the lights, and the roaring when they come, right? So when you think about it, it could be also your mind creating that. And
Well,
when
for
so many
sure, that's
when,
definitely something that could happen for
yeah,
sure.
but when so many people are thinking about one and the same concept, it becomes a thought form. It
Mm.
becomes a separate entity that is running on its own. And I was able to understand that doing my further research, because I did not even understand why I'm seeing this. And it was at the time I was going to Russian Orthodox Church and I could see it. But at the same time, I started seeing things, I was seeing things before that belong to different mythologies, to different religions. And that would come and I would be able to converse with them. And that would be an objective reality, meaning something that existed before, either a mythology or some story that was recorded by different cultures.
Mm. The only
So,
other thing I can think of is
yeah.
it kind of sounds like, because like you had a good point. You said, a Catholic doesn't necessarily see, somebody from the Buddhism
Yeah. Why? We could
deities
ask
show up.
ourselves a question.
So I started thinking, I'm like, okay, well, it's like, in parapsychology, we believe that apparitions can project through telepathy or some sort of form of extrasensory perception, how they want us to view them so that we recognize them. For example, your grandfather or your grandmother or whatnot. What if, you always hear of like the different religions and the no denomination people, like Wiccans, they call just upon like their higher power and things like that. What if that's like whatever that is, that religious universe, or that almighty powerful entity is projecting themselves in the way that we understand it. So if I grew up Roman Catholic, I'm told, that there's the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, and then of course there's other important figures like the Virgin Mary and things like that. But somebody that grew up in Islam would know more about Muhammad and other kind of deities and characters in their religion. So what if it's like that higher power projecting itself to what we know it to be? And that's why, somebody that's raised as Catholic might see uh, those Catholic figures.
That
It's
is very interesting.
it is an
That
interesting theory. I don't know
I
how we
think
would test it, but that just kind of popped into my mind because we know spirits do that. So why couldn't, whatever those powerful characters are that we all
they
believe
come to they come to us in the image that we would understand.
exactly.
For example, if you look at the biblical stories, if the angels would come, angels that in fact they were just messengers. We call them angels, but angelos in Greek is the messenger, and they would come with some sort of a message, but they
Mhm.
would come in the image of a man. And they would say, "Do not be afraid of us." Why? It's the same thing as in the classical Greek mythology, where Zeus would always, and different deities that would transform themselves into different characters so humans would not be afraid of them. And
Mm.
it will always say, "Do not be afraid of us."
Yeah, that is something common that you do hear. Yeah, yeah.
So perhaps this is the case. So there's, if we looked at the religions, at the word religions and the mythology, we would see all these commonalities. Everything comes from one source, and this Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit is not a new concept that Christians have invented. It We trace it back to the Egyptians. We trace it back to even from Egyptians to Sumerians, and
Hmm.
we and it is in Hinduism, it is in Buddhism, in every culture. If we look at that, so perhaps this is exactly the case, and we just cracked the code, you and I, right now, right?
It
So
could
there's
be.
one
Yeah,
deity, right? There's one narrative, one story, but for the particular cultures in different nations, it would be shown totally differently in the
exactly.
way that we understand, in the
Yes.
way that we have the frame of reference that will be familiar to us and understood by us.
No, that's just it. Yeah. No, that we had an epiphany tonight. It's very
Exactly, we
interesting.
cracked the
Yeah.
code.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it is. It's got me thinking. It's very interesting, but that could be a potential reason, like you said, why, why somebody that's Catholic doesn't see these other, like why isn't the ancient Egyptian god Iris appearing to me? You know what I mean? It's not something that I would be familiar with. That would be, a deity that would have to say, "Don't be afraid. I'm not here to, cause you any harm." Because to me, it would be very foreign and probably very scary. But no, it's a fascinating topic for sure.
Yeah, but when it happens to us, for example, the Roman Catholics, they know one thing and they think that everything else is just demonic.
Mm.
If it is not Christian, then everything is demonic. And you looked at the Islam, for example, they think whatever's Christian is also like so not of this world, and we just shouldn't believe in that at all. We become dirty. But at the same time, my God, I remember that I went to Christian Orthodox church, and believe it or not, I shared with the father that I went to the Protestant church. He said, like, you were sort of contaminated and we need to bring you back through certain rituals into the church. And said, where else did you go? Well, I said that I went to Catholic church as well, right? I said, oh, it's okay, Catholics are our brothers, we don't need to do anything extraordinary about that. And it just blew my mind. I had to be brought back to the church with certain rituals to what is the word then, to reconfirm myself, right? Yeah, reconfirm myself essentially,
Right.
uh, back into the church from something that was contaminated, which was just the Protestant church. The same Christians, same believers.
Interesting.
So why exactly? Why do we see? Is because we want to see that. It's because we're under that influence. But if we step aside, thinking that other religions also have right to existence, and other people who are believing in their own gods, right? They also have the right to believe. When we
Mm.
step aside from that radical thinking and just like one like the horse with the blinders, like running through life, like if we just take those blinders off, we're going to be surprised at the incredible stories developing around us. And
Mm.
we might not just see Jesus there, right? Because when people tell me that I saw Jesus, and you see those Christian channels that all saw Jesus. How come I never saw Jesus? I was also Christian. I never saw Jesus.
Yeah.
So if you look at that, you have to be able to keep your mind open and not just really concentrate on something that you think is right and other people are wrong.
Mm.
I learned a long time ago that if you tell somebody that you're wrong yourself, because we all have our own understanding of truth. We have our own narrative that we believe in, that we were brought up in.
That's yeah.
Yeah.
No, you're right. Uh, I find cultural and sociological factors very interesting, especially in the work of parapsychology, because you do have to dig into it. Because even, say, for example, with near-death experiences, one common thing that a lot of people report is, crossing through that bright white light. But there are other cultures that talk about crossing over a bridge. For example, some of the Asian cultures believe that there's like a bridge that you have to cross, and it's the same kind of concept as the light. So once you go through the light, you're through. Same thing with the bridge. Once you go across the bridge, you go through it. But it's the same event and the same experience, but it's different as
It's
well, because
perceived differently.
perceived
Mhm.
differently because of that cultural or possibly religious difference. And it's
Possibly.
fascinating. Yeah.
But I grew up in the culture, in the country without God. 70 years without God in the not so much communist socialist state, right?
Hmm.
And I was 17 when I had near death experience. I was 17, and I did see the tunnel, and and I did see the light at the end of the tunnel. So I did not have any frame of reference. I did not know anything about it, about the past life, not the past life, but the near death experiences. To me, it was something alien. I thought I was dying, and I thought I really died because I felt so horrible. And when I came back, I understood that that was something extraordinary, that I came out of my body and I saw myself laying down there. That was so bizarre to me that I could see my body from the ceiling. So I did not have any didn't hear any religious stories for afterlife, or how do you pass on to different life. So, how do we know all of that? Yes, we hear all those stories that we pass through the bridge, right? We have to cross the bridge, we have to cross the river Lete, right? That then we'll forget, of course, all the memories, we'll forget all the memories. And then what is true? What is true to us? what's true to us is our own personal experience, because it becomes so real to us. Whatever we see in our minds, it becomes more real to us that we see in a physical world.
So that would be another thing that you, if somebody asked you, do you believe in near death experiences? That would be something that you would say, I don't need to believe in it. I know that
I know.
you've actually experienced one.
Right. Without false modesty, I can say, I know. Yeah, I know.
That's
Yeah.
very, very, very interesting.
But at the same time, people get scared when they hear or see something like that. Like you said, oh, if you get some interesting case, like let me know and I will come. Interesting case, you mean something like so extraordinary, something like really scary, right? And why do we want to hear? Why do we want to see something so scary? Don't you think that when you're gonna come and see that, the all the hair on your body is gonna raise up and you're gonna be so scared and paralyzed with fear? No, we want to see it.
Yeah, yeah, no, that's for sure. And hopefully get some pictures and video of it as well.
Right, exactly. You would be there to take pictures.
Yeah, yeah.
Saying, yeah, I'm scared, but I'm gonna take pictures. I'm gonna bring it to the world.
Yeah, that's so funny.
Yeah.
Uh,
Well, this has been the we've been going live on United Public Radio Network, 107.7 and the 105, what?
105.3
105.3. That's right.
FM.
So
Yep.
we are 107.7, right? So that's what's in my memory,
Yes,
in my short memory.
107.7 FM, 105.3 FM.
You just have to give me the suggestion so I would remember the second one.
That's right.
Hypnotic suggestion.
That's
And I
right.
would remember this way.
I don't
Yeah,
think next week, I don't think we have another guest on either, do we? It's just you and me next week, right?
exactly. Because we have so many things to discuss and it can be just us and
Perfect.
very interesting conversations. I believe that our viewers and listeners also find it very interesting and will welcome more comments and questions.
Yeah, that was great tonight. We had a little bit of interaction there. Our email as well is science and the paranormal at ppri.net. You can always email Dr. Yana or myself any questions that you have. If you are interested in, this podcast, certainly give us a like, a follow, a subscribe, share, comment. We have a Facebook page. We have a website. What's the website address, Dr. Yana?
That this science and paranormal podcast.com.
Science and Paranormal Podcast.com. And of course, if you're interested in the work that I do with my nonprofit organization, Paranormal Phenomena Research and Investigation, you can always visit the website at ppri.net. And I think next week we'll talk about some demonology and some other really interesting topics.
Fantastic and fascinating topics. Exactly.
That's fantastic. All right.
Well, thank you everybody for joining us today. And we hope to see you next week.
Yes, everyone take care. We'll see you next week.
Have a good night, everyone.
You too.
Good night, Dr. Elliott.
Good night.
Go to sleep.
I will. Take care.